Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. Let me start tonight with this. Yesterday, a day of infamy for the Republican Party. General Colin Powell told the vivid, nasty truth. He blasted his party, especially its leaders, for engaging in what he called flagrant race baiting. Many of his points have been made here on Hardball. The racist language about the President of the United States shucking and jiving, about him being lazy, the unending background assault of the birthers saying the president's not legitimate, not even an authentic American. Then the general did what I and others have been pounding for months, this brutal attempt at voter suppression, this multi-state Republican plan to shrink black electoral strength by slamming down on the chance to vote. What Colin Powell said yesterday is going right to the heart of the Republican intolerance, made more powerful by the fact that the indictment has now been made by this country's most celebrated African-American Republican. Eugene Robinson is a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the Washington Post and an MSNBC contributor. Alex Wagner is the host of Now, the celebrated program, with her noontime greatness coming down us every day of the week. Anyway, let's listen to General Powell. I always have to have a lighter note because this is pretty tough stuff. Here's General Powell on Meet the Press yesterday in a historic occasion.
There's also a dark vein of intolerance in some parts of the party. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is they still sort of look down on minorities. How can I evidence that? When I see a former governor say that the president is shucking and jiving, that's a racial era slave term. When I see another former governor after the president's first debate where he didn't do very well, says that the president was lazy. He didn't say he was slow, he was tired, he didn't do well. He said he was lazy. Now, it may not mean anything to most Americans, but to those of us who are African Americans, the second word is shiftless, and then there's a third word that goes along with it. Birther, the whole birther movement. Why do senior Republican leaders tolerate this kind of discussion within the party?
It's a great thing about Colin Powell. Besides being a great man, he has a great sense of history.
He does have a sense of history. Look, you know, the thing was, he went there. David didn't take him there. He volunteered to go there, to call out the Republican Party as the senior African-American figure in the Republican Party, to call them out on this coded racial language, this not-so-coded racial language. Yeah. It was kind of a shot across the bow, I think, and kind of planted a flag for moderate Republicans to say, hey, you know, he's right. We really do need to reshape the party and reshape its message if we hope to survive.
I think it's very important when you point out that he brought this up. David regularly asked a lot of other things about important things, but not they were newsmaking. But I think he probably made it. Will he lead on this? Can he lead? Does he have the traction with the party to move people like Christie to speak out, the more moderate forces in the party?
Well, he certainly provides a certain amount of cover, I think, for others. Now, he hasn't been a sort of inside baseball political figure. You know, he's not the kind of guy who's going to then pick up the phone and make 50 phone calls to people to back me up here. But it was so public and so purposeful that I think it's a moment that will be remembered when Colin Powell kind of called the party out. And
so well said.
And it's something that people are going to have to answer for.
Well, I called it a day of infamy, Alex, and here's my point. It bugs me as a white guy to be blunt about it. I think it's an embarrassment to white people as well as a travesty in our country generally that people engage in this crap at this point in our history when we do have an African-American president and ought to be proud of the damn fact instead of going in the other direction. And what I can't believe is the people I talk to say, what are you talking about, Matthews? We're not engaging in race baiting here. We're not using these terms. You're hearing something here. And that's what really bugs me about people that don't want to hear, for some sick reason, don't want to hear what's going on here. And thank God Colin Powell finally came out and called out these guys like Reince Priebus, the head of the party. And he didn't call him by name. He was a gentleman, I might say, although I don't know why he was. I'd have called out Sarah Palin. I'd have called out Sununu. These are names of people that use that rotten language.
Well, and the list goes on, right, Chris? I mean, Rand Paul.
Donald Trump.
Rand Paul doesn't support the Voting Rights Act. Haley Barbour, who is a de facto leader of the Republican Party, has voiced support for white citizens councils. I mean, you're talking about a litany of, these aren't even dog whistles at this point. This is incredibly racially loaded language. And after Sarah Palin made the shuckin' and jivin' comments, she doubled down on them. I mean, I guess the question is this a moment for the Republican Party? Is this an inflection point? Do they say, hey, we lost the black vote by 93%. We're losing Hispanics by 73%. We're losing Asian Americans by 71%. Do they learn these lessons? Is there any?
Well, their lesson, unfortunately, Alex, their lesson is let's suppress that vote we can't get. Here's General Powell. When you hear a lot of General Powell on the show tonight, here's General Powell getting to that point of voter suppression, which was organized in like 36 states by the Republican Party to stop blacks from being able to vote the way they normally vote. Let's listen.
I think what the Republican Party needs to do now is take a very hard look at itself and understand that the country has changed. The country is changing demographically. And if the Republican Party does not change along with that demographic, they're going to be in trouble. And so when we see that in one more generation, the minorities of America, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans will be the majority of the country, you can't go around saying we don't want to have a solid immigration policy. We're going to dismiss the 47%. We are going to make it hard for these minorities to vote, as they did in the last election. What did that produce? The court struck most of that down. Most importantly, it caused people to turn out and stand in line because these Republicans are trying to keep us from voting.
Seeing the leaders is what he talked about. He wants the leaders to lead the party and really lead them down the right path. And you think about Speaker Boehner. When he publicly says, I can't stop the birthers from talking the way they talk, that's just their opinion. And you hear people like Johnson, and who I thought was a heavyweight Republican for years, using terms like, why doesn't the president learn how to be an American? It's not just the one line. It's lots of lines.
And you're absolutely right, because the leadership of the Republican Party, as most people see it, is the leadership of in Congress. It's John Boehner and Mitch McConnell and the House, and Reince Priebus. And if those people aren't realizing the demographic realities, aren't realizing that the party has to be a big tent party if it's ever going to win national elections again, then where goeth the GOP? I mean,
well, let me tell you, you're laughing because you see the weird part of this. The weird thing is you're turning off black votes if people vote, but you're also turning out the electorate, Alex. I mean, the giddy part of this is, as I once said a long time ago, Frank Rizzo in Philly, who wasn't too popular among African Americans, was the greatest voter registrar in my city's history, because people were not going to be talked out of voting. They were not going to be talked into not voting. They showed up. Look at the lines. And here's General Powell saying it caused people to turn out and stand in line because these Republicans are trying to keep us from voting. It had an adverse effect on their attempt to shut down the vote. Alex.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to play the clip. No, in terms of this being, it's not just bad for Republicans. It's great for Democrats. But at the end of the day, Chris, I mean, maybe I'm too romantic about this, but I really do believe in the importance of a two-party system. And when the root of this, as we know this, it's gerrymandering, it's redistricting. It's because they don't have to play ball. And if they can, and you now have a Republican Party that is basically held hostage by a small minority that really only cares about getting primaried and about their own districts, when they are no longer putting the party as a number one priority, when that is no longer a consideration, to say nothing of the actual country. I mean, then you have a real crisis. And I have long maintained inviting the Tea Party inviting in what is increasingly a radical faction of conservatives to the tent of the Republican Party. I don't know how you reconcile that at the end of the day. There's got to be a schism at some point.
Yeah, here's General Powell saying the party has to fix itself before it worries about putting up an electable candidate. He says, don't think about candidates, think about message. Here he is.
Everybody wants to talk about who's going to be the candidate. You better think first about what's the party actually going to represent. If it's just going to represent the far right wing of the political spectrum, I think the party is in difficulty. I'm a moderate, but I'm still a Republican. That's how I was raised. And until I voted for Mr. Obama twice, I had voted for 7 straight Republican presidents.
That's absolutely right. I mean, if the Republican Party is going to be a fringe party, then it marginalizes itself and becomes less relevant to the discourse. Only obstructionist is what the party is seeking to be.
But what is their plan?
That's real. I don't know, but it's a shame, because as someone who believes in progressive ideas, who wants to see them flourish and develop, I realize that not having a smart, engaged conservative party, Republican Party, makes progressive lazy, frankly, and unimaginative, and it's bad for the country. I mean, it's bad for the country.
Don't we all like to go to? I think Alex made a good point. I made it last week, something like it. Don't we all like to go into the booth knowing we have an option play? That if the Democrats have been blowing it for too many times, we give the Republicans a shot, or the other way around. You can actually choose.
It's important.
Well, here's General Powell on the Republican. Here is the clip. You thought I'd be playing. Here he is talking about the Republicans' image problem. You respond to this, Alex. Let's listen.
The party has gathered unto itself a reputation that it is the party of the rich. It is the party of lower taxes. But there are a lot of people who are lower down the food chain, the economic chain, who are also paying lots of taxes relative to their income. And they need help. We need more education work being done in this country. We need a solid immigration policy. We have to look at climate change. There are a lot of things that the American people are expecting. And the Republican Party, as they get ready for the next election, really has to focus on some of these issues and not ignore them.
Chris, what's sad to me about that is that by virtue of mentioning the phrase climate change, it's almost like Colin Powell has kicked himself out of the Republican Party. I mean, this party used to play ball on that issue. Now they're denying the actual science behind it. I mean, they have swung so far right. And my question to all, after all of this, after that interview, which was incendiary and was very much a line in the sand, as you pointed out, for the GOP, is when will the Republican Party admit they have a problem? Because every time something like this happens, there is a doubling down, there is a defense, there is an attack on the messenger. There is a problem here. The party is in crisis, and someone has got to bring it together.
It's one of those magic moments when Martin Luther King was jailed back in '60, and Kennedy made the call to Mrs. King, and Nixon said, "I'm not going to do it." And Jackie Robinson left the train saying, "This guy doesn't get it."
This is a moment that we're going to remember, I think, and the Republican Party really should pay attention. We're making
the noise here. We're trying to shake them up. Anyway, thank you, Gene Robinson, and thank you, Alex Wagner.